All right, good morning. Welcome to our Encouraging Truth series. We're glad you're joining us today. If you want to know more about our ministry, go online to womensbiblestudy.com. There you can learn everything you want to know about us. We are in the middle of a series called Encouraging Truth because we want to have you on Monday morning wake up to something that will hopefully encourage you during the week. So today I want to talk about those of you that are dealing with people who are religious. Because it can be so incredibly frustrating to have religious people in our life. And a lot of these religious people, they're in our life, but they belong to like religious organizations. And they don't believe in the same Jesus that you do, and they don't believe in the same God that you do. But the problem is that they're really, really nice people. They're really nice, and they go to church all the time, and they help the homeless, and they build homes in, Mexico for people. But the problem is that we have a hard time putting together, but they're religious, and I don't think they're a Christian, but they do all these nice things, and so then we get all confused. And we mostly get confused because we know what the Bible says. We know the Bible says that Jesus is the only way to God. That's it, no other way. And we know that these religious people are not putting their faith and trust in the Jesus of the Bible, so we get confused. So here is our encouraging truth number 54. You need to know this, that people can be religious and still not know God at all. Like, we have to really get that. And it's not like, I'm not saying that, but it's actually something that Jesus says. Because he dealt with religious people all the time. He dealt with people who prayed the loudest, prayed the longest, who fasted the most, who tithed the most, who obeyed the rules the most. And you know what Jesus said about them? He said they're hypocrites, and they're wicked, and they're godless. Look at Matthew 23:5. Everything they do is done for men to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long, and they love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogue. They love to be greeted in the marketplaces and have men call them rabbi. These are religious Pharisees, religious people, and yet you see them doing religious things. Verse 13, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! He said, you shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. Woe to you, blind guides! See what's going on here? These are religious people that people look up to. They looked the part, they dressed the part, they knew everything, they prayed, they did all the things. And Jesus is saying, I'm sorry, you're blind guides. He says, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. He's saying, you guys look great from the outside, but inside something's not right. Verse 27, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside you are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. Verse 28, in the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. In other words, here's what you need to know is that there are people in this world who are religious, but they are also godless. See, just because someone looks spiritual and they do a lot of really good things, it doesn't mean they really truly know God. And we see that all in the Bible. The most difficult people that Jesus had to deal with were the religious elite. And the problem is they missed the truth completely. And they knew their scriptures. And people looked up to them for their knowledge. It's like us looking at a pastor or a Bible teacher and going, wow, they're so knowledgeable. But what we see from what Jesus tells us is this, that religion does not mean a relationship with God. It just doesn't. So how can we tell if a person is one of those, religious but godless? And I think we can tell by this, Matthew 7, verse 15. He says, watch out for the false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. Here's how you know. By their fruit, you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus by their fruits you will recognize them. Now, the reason why we get so frustrated with that is because the religious people that I know are really, really nice. And they seem to have the fruits of the Spirit in them. They love people, and they're joyful, and they're kind, and they're helpful, and they have self-control, all of these kind of things. And so if you judge them by their fruit, let's say, then it just kind of seems like they're in. But then one day, it dawned on me that they're just attached to the wrong tree. They're attached to, here you go, a religious tree. See, we have to be attached to the right tree. And if we're not attached, people can produce fruit on trees that are not right. So like, let's look at a religious tree, or how about a good works tree? People are just out there doing really good things, but they're atheists or Buddhists or Muslims. See, the problem is they're attached to a wrong tree. They're producing fruit, but their fruit is coming off of a wrong tree. Some people have this, they have a philanthropy tree. There you go. They just give away money, and they're just, doing stuff like that. And the problem is, a lot of people do nice things in this world, but they're attached to the wrong tree. The tree they have to be attached to is the Jesus tree. That's the only tree that matters to God. The fruit that comes off of a tree that is the Jesus tree. See, what I realized about religious people is that whatever is produced in their life, it doesn't actually mean that they know God. And they aren't attached to the right tree because they're spiritually blind. When someone is spiritually blind, they can't see what we see. They don't understand what a Jesus tree is all about. They don't understand that Jesus is the only way to God. And they honestly can't even see the truth of the Bible. Dusty's in a class right now that's trying to teach him that there is no God, and you should be an atheist, and evolution is the way it is. And Dusty looks at these people and he's like, do they honestly believe it? And the answer is, yeah, they really do, because they are spiritually blind. So understanding that about people, here's what we need to do. We need to treat them more compassionately. We just do. Because I like to go, how can you not see this? Like, open your Bible. It's right there. It's so simple. And yet they won't open the Bible, so they can't see it, and they're spiritually blind. And a lot of people are spiritually blind because of this, how they were raised, their background, or their church affiliation. I always say this with my Mormon cousins. My Mormon cousins, from the minute they were born, they were indoctrinated into this false religion. And when you're taught something all of your life from the moment that you were born, of course they're going to push back when I come to them and say, look, what you believe is false. They don't even have, there's nothing in their brain that helps them to even understand that, because they're spiritually blind. So when you're talking to a religious person, we need to hear, recognize their past and start there. Recognize their past, where they're coming from, what church they came from, what family they came from. Because think of why you believe what you believe. And a lot of it's because your parents took you to a Christian church where you were taught about Jesus. The same is true with politics. Why are you a Republican, or why are you a Democrat? Why do you vote the way you do? What is your views on abortion or same-sex marriage? And it's usually what comes out of your mouth is what you were taught, how you were raised in your life. So the point is this, is that when we tell others about Jesus, you have to know right off the bat that they're not mad at you when you tell them something. They just have all these preconceived ideas about God. Because if they were raised Mormon or Jehovah's Witness or Muslim or Buddhist, they're just going to automatically come from that place in their brain that this is what's right. And if you went up to them and said, hey, you're wrong, Jesus is the only way to God, they'd be like, what? Like, my mommy didn't tell me that. My grandpappy told me something different. So we need to learn to give people grace and understand that if they reject us, they're not really rejecting us. They just honestly are spiritually blind. They don't know what we're talking about. But here's what I learned about people coming to Jesus, is that God is the only one that can change their mind. See, you and I, we don't need to fight with someone and argue with them and go all, crazy Christian on them. We just have to pray that God opens their eyes to the truth. That's my prayer when I go to bed every night. God, I need you to suddenly, somehow open the blind eyes of my Mormon cousins. There's nothing else I can do except do that. God is the only one that can open their spiritual eyes. So if someone isn't wanting to listen to you, it's really because they are spiritually blind. The light switch has not been turned on yet spiritually for them. And somehow that became really, really freeing with my Mormon cousins. I found myself crying a lot for them. I would be so sad for them. Some of them are getting really older and will possibly pass away soon, and I can't reach them with this. But then this light switch went on for me. It said this: my job is to share with them the truth about Jesus, but it would be God's job to open their eyes. We talk a lot about David Wood's story. I actually think I talked about him in a last lesson or two, but he's just the best light switch turned on conversion story I've ever heard. If you want to hear a story, you can go to our Truth Matters series. It's David Wood. He's talking about Islam, but he shares this story. But he was an atheist, went to prison for trying to kill his dad. In prison, there's one Christian who God used to eventually save David Wood. But I'm telling you, it took years of patience, compassion, and David Wood was not a nice guy to him at all. But God did the most miraculous work in David's life. And you know how he did it? David's laying down. I don't think it was like in the hospital part of it. And he's looking up at the wall. And he's seeing how this wall was built with bricks. And seeing that a wall had to be built by someone with all these bricks, it was like God just flipped on a light switch spiritually for him. Because it was a reminder that God had to build this world. It couldn't just happen. And it was just a moment. And it was all because of bricks on a wall. See, God opens spiritual eyes in his timing. So if we go Rambo on people, it's only going to turn them away. See, the problem is with religious people is that they live under this idea that in order to go to heaven, they have to do all these rules. They have to live by a bunch of rules. And God's only going to be happy with them if they do what their church tells them what to do. They somehow bought into this, that I'm a good person and God is up there weighing my good against my bad, and I know my good will win out. A lot of people join religions because they're told that you're not going to go to heaven if you don't join us. But the problem is that once they join a church, they realize that it's a lot of work. And following Jesus should not be a lot of work. Like he did the work on the cross for us and he saved us. It's not us working our way to heaven. We're trusting him to get us in those doors. See, Jesus hated religion, and he had nothing good at all to say about the religious elite of the day. And this is why, because religious people do this. Matthew 23:4, they make loads that are hard to carry and lay them on the shoulders of the people. However, they're not willing to lift a finger to move them. He's saying, you guys are telling these people, do this, do that, do this in order to make God happy. But he's saying, you religious people, you don't do it yourself. Verse 13, how horrible it will be for you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You lock people out of the kingdom of heaven. You don't enter yourself, and you don't permit others to enter when they try. Here's the bottom line. We all have religious people in our lives. Our job is, of course, to tell them about Jesus. But for many of you, you're going to get laughed at, and you're going to get ridiculed and made fun of. So here's what you need to do. Pray for them. Don't stop praying for them, and don't stop loving them. And recognize that, you know what? The reason why they act like that is because their spiritual eyes have never been opened. And until God deems to do that, they're going to continue to act that way towards you. Don't ever take it personal. I can't explain that enough. Don't take it personal. Don't start feeling sorry for yourself. Nobody likes me. Everyone hates me because of my faith in Jesus. Be in it for the long haul. Be in it for the long haul. Shake off whatever the people are saying to you, your coworkers, what they're saying behind your back. Shake off what your parents or your siblings are saying behind your back. And the reason why is because of our cute little starfish story. Once upon a time, there was an old man who used to go to the ocean to do his writing. He was walking along the shore after a big storm had passed, and the vast was littered with hundreds of starfish. They're all on the ground as far as he could see. Off in the distance, he noticed a small little boy who would bend down, pick up an object, and throw it into the sea. The boy came closer, and the man called to him and said, "Good morning, may I ask what you're doing?" And the young boy stopped and he said, "Well, I'm throwing starfish into the sea. The tide has washed them up out to the beach, and they can't return to the sea by themselves. Because when the sun gets high, they're going to die unless I throw them back into the water." The man says, "But there's hundreds and thousands of starfish out here on the beach." He said, "I'm afraid you really won't make that much of a difference." And the little boy bent down and picked up another starfish and threw it as far as he could into the ocean. He turned to the man and he said, "But it made a difference to that one." See, if 99 religious, godless people you know never come to Jesus, but one does, you know what? It made a difference to that one person, an eternal difference for all eternity. See, we can feel sadness and compassion for religious people when we realize this is sometimes the farthest people from God are the most religious, and that's a really sad place for someone to be. See, there is a huge difference between following religion and following Jesus. And we need to treat religious people with love and compassion because, encouraging truth number 54, we know this, people can be religious and still not know God at all. And that's actually really heartbreaking. Because we know the answer, and the answer is Jesus, who can break the chains of any religion and give them the freedom that they need to know God the right and proper way. So just remind people, just tell them, there's just a really big difference between being on a religious tree and being on the Jesus tree. Hope that helps you. Have a really good week.